Hi everybody, Dr. Zach here. I hope that everybody had a great 4th of July and that you found some freedoms that still exist to celebrate. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that today, about some freedoms, about celebrating, and about really taking back responsibility for not just our health. We've been talking about that from the beginning, but for the life that we want to pursue and want to live. And one of the things that has stirred this up is that we see lots and lots of changes going on with the numbers that are coming in. We've talked about the inflated numbers on the total number of cases of COVID-19, but we're seeing a continued decline in the death rate. So what that means is that more people are actually showing up to have overcome or have developed antibodies for the virus, and it's becoming less and less deadly all the time. So basically we're moving past the curve, which is what the goal of any kind of a viral infection is to get past the curve. I know that because initially there was concerns that it was going to have such a high mortality rate, we wanted to flatten the curve, right? That's slow it down as much as we can, spread things out so that our hospitals don't get overloaded. Well, that never turned out to be the need. We saw lots and lots and lots of hospitals that set up different places in their parking lots, and they had all kinds of different emergency procedures set up and protocols set up so that they could handle the massive numbers of people that would be showing up in the hospitals, and we never saw that. Most of those went completely unused. I shared a story a couple of weeks ago about Houston and how Houston is one of the hot spots because they actually saw an increase in the number of hospitalizations, but even with the increase of number of hospitalizations, they were still at between 70 to 80% capacity of the COVID units they had. So that means that there was kind of this, what they were talking about, a second wave or a resurgence that's taken place, and we're seeing that it's really not taken place. So I wanted to show you a couple stats today to help, again, put us at ease that we're getting past this and that we can start getting our lives back and letting our government officials, the leaders, know that that's what our intent is. We don't want to be continued to be at a place where we're restricted by what they're telling us when they're getting a bunch of bad information. So I wanted to start with this one. This is actually a great article that talks about death rates in London and how London was a hot spot for a while. And this is talking about the death rate in London and what's called the R rate, or the R naught rate, which is what it initially was. So the R rate has to do, it's actually the reproduction number for a virus. And so it's kind of the most simplistic way to look at it is, this is how many people can you expect one person who is infected with a virus, how many other people can you expect that one person to affect or to spread that to? And so when we take a look at London, who had a big onslaught initially, this is where a lot of the information that came out from. We talked about from Cambridge, from Oxford, from the different hospitals that they predicted kind of this massive death rate that was going to decimate humanity on our planet. And so we see that London was hit, and at the peak, their R rate was 3, which means that one person would potentially affect 3 others. And so they took a look at this, and so if you can see this graph in here, the R number is going to be this blue line here that comes here, and then it takes a big drop and then it levels out. So that means that at 3, the peak was at 3, so that'd be that before our bodies had adapted to what was going on and this virus is out there, one person could infect 3 others. Interestingly, is the week before the lockdown in England, that number had already dropped to 2.3. And now that number is at almost 0. So they're showing more and more. The World Health Organization has even come out and said that this is really hard to spread. And it's really hard to spread because our immune systems are adapting. They're getting used to this. And we're getting past the curve. So we've got this natural herd immunity that's taken place with that. So that's good news. Another good news, and this is another graph that I've got. This comes from CDC information. And this is basically the statistics that come from the CDC, and then talking about what an epidemic or a pandemic is based upon the World Health Organization's numbers. So bottom line is that for a disease to qualify as an epidemic, it means that that disease would have to be responsible for 7.2% of all of the deaths taking place over a certain period of time in that community. So that would mean that today, for us to be in an epidemic of COVID, 7.2% or more of every person that dies today would die from COVID-19. And so this is a graph that basically shows the course of deaths over time, and you'll see that the orange line in the middle, that's going to be the 7.2%. And then you see the death toll that was going on prior to, and then we have this massive influx, and we'll talk about this in just a second, but we see we get above that 7.2%. So this is epidemic, this is pandemic since it's worldwide. And then we see it's been dropping, and we see that for the past several weeks, we've actually become far lower than that 7.2%. So what that means is technically, right now, even with all the numbers that we're getting and the questions and the bad lab tests that are coming out and labs that are having to be shut down because everybody's testing positive and then they get tested by another lab and they're testing negative, even though there's all of this controversy and we see a lot of false positives, it's not a good system. We're not doing a good job of accurately looking at things. We see that we are actually no longer, based on the number of people that are dying and the ones that they can actually attribute COVID-19 to, we're no longer in an epidemic. We're no longer in an epidemic. I'm going to say it again. We're no longer in an epidemic. That should be good news to us. That should make us go, phew, hey, that's another thing, that end of the world crisis that we've survived. We've gotten past it. Now, here's where this is going to become kind of a controversy, because there's a whole lot of people with a whole lot of money invested in coming out with vaccines and other things that don't want us to be out of an epidemic. They don't want us to get past the curve. They're really nervous that everything is going to be better before they come out with a vaccine, because then we're not going to be as anxious to line up and get that vaccine. And we're talking, because this is a global vaccine, first time in history they're wanting to actually make between 7 billion and 14 billion doses so they can get it to almost every person on the planet. And with that means that we're not looking at 10 or 20 billion dollars in revenue that comes from this. We're looking at hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue. And I don't know what that looks like, but the people that do don't want to lose that. And so they want to keep us in this place of fear and this place of dreading the second wave that's coming and all this other stuff that's going on. But I want you to know is that we got two things working for us. The R rate has dropped way down, which means it's harder and harder and harder for us to share this with people. And the death rate has dropped down below epidemic numbers. And that's the direction we would just expect that it would continue to go. So with that said, maybe it's time we should start living as if we've beat this thing, instead of still feeling like we're victims. And we just celebrated Independence Day. We just celebrated Freedom Day. We just celebrated, celebrating the freedom we have in this country. And in most places, we weren't allowed to even see fireworks shows or to get together with large groups of people, to even meet in churches we normally would. I saw that Dr. Newsom in California has now said that there's no singing in church. I can be this far away from a police officer screaming profanities out them, spewing all kinds of aerosolization germs all over him, and that's totally okay in California. But for me to be in a church singing and worshiping, that's against the law. We've got a problem here. We've got some laws that have been laid down in a pandemic or an epidemic situation that have violated the way that laws are normally laid down in this land, and for reason. And we've given up a whole lot of basic rights that we should continue to have. And so with that, I'm going to encourage you to be thinking about that. What does life look like going forward if we stay in fear? What does life look like if we continue to let the politicians dictate what's going on when it's not in alignment with the realities that are taking place? I think it was a newspaper, and it was having to do with Texas. I think it was their attorney general. It was either that guy or their lieutenant governor. It was one of the guys that's in fairly high place in Texas, and he says, we're done listening to Fauci. Fauci has missed the mark every single time from the beginning. How long do we continue to listen to him when he's been wrong every single time? Yet, at the same time, we see that Texas has basically locked down some businesses, locked down restaurants, shut down bars since that person's statement came out. So with that is that we see we're getting past the curve. We see the R number dropping. We see that we're winning this victory. Our immune systems are amazing and strong and vital, and we're doing exactly what we've done throughout history. But we still have the political system that is putting down laws and restrictions on the way that we live, the way that we worship, the way that we walk through grocery stores and through nature and the parks that we can go to, the places we can go, the places we can go visit without having to spend 14 days quarantined when we go there. We see the politicians laying down these restrictions that don't align with the reality. And so here's what I want you to take and give some thoughts to. I've never been a politically active person, somebody who is just really into politics and all that's going on, but I'm realizing I no longer have a choice. I need to let my voice be heard now more than ever, because we are risking the loss of more now than we ever have in my generation, and probably going back a few generations. And that we've got some rights that we need to stand for, because if we continue sitting complacently, I'm convinced they're going to continue to say this is the new normal. This is the way we're going to continue going with things forward from here. Our kids are going to grow up in schools wearing masks and hiding behind shower curtains or plexiglass and not being able to do the stuff that they want to do with their friends. Our churches are going to continue to be shut down. We're not going to be able to sing. We're going to be basically restricted in how we can go about living. We're not going to be able to visit our loved ones in nursing homes or have them come visit us. We're not going to be able to interact together as humans. We're going to be restricted. And so with that here's what I want to leave you with today, is that we won. The R number's down almost to zero. That means that it's hard to spread this thing. We're over the hump. We got the death rate down. It is not an epidemic anymore. It's over. So join me and exercise in your freedom. Taking some time to think about what does it look like to get back to living a life fully free and alive instead of one that's in this new normal. Until next time, this is Dr. Zach. Can't wait to talk to you. Be blessed.